The electrician arrived at the Millionaire's office to fix a socket and froze upon seeing his childhood photo in a black frame. The morning sun glinted off the glass towers of downtown Chicago as Ethan Cole pulled his beat-up Ford truck into a visitor's parking space at Langford Industries. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, smoothing down his dark brown hair and straightening his navy work shirt with Cole Electrical stitched above the pocket. At 30, Ethan had built his small business from nothing, something he took quiet pride in, given his humble beginnings. Langford Industries, 20th floor, he muttered to himself, reading from the work order. Emergency outlet repair in the CEO's office. Priority job. The security guard at the front desk eyed his toolbox suspiciously before issuing a temporary badge. Elevator to your right. Someone will meet you upstairs. The sleek elevator whisked him upward, its polished surfaces a stark contrast to the industrial buildings where he usually worked. Ethan felt out of place but kept his expression neutral. He'd learned long ago that acting confident was half the battle in life. When the doors opened on the 20th floor, a stern-faced assistant with a tight bun and even tighter smile greeted him. "Follow me, miss. Langford is on a call," but she insisted this be fixed immediately. Ethan followed her through a maze of glass-walled offices until they reached an imposing set of double doors. The assistant knocked once before pushing them open. The electrician, Ms. Langford. The office was a testament to power and wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Lake Michigan, while sleek modern furniture and abstract art created an atmosphere of sophisticated taste. Behind a massive desk sat Victoria Langford, CEO of the Langford Empire, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. At 52, she had the kind of beauty that had been refined rather than diminished by age, though deep lines around her eyes suggested years of strain beneath her composed exterior. "The outlet behind my desk has been sparking," she said without looking up from her computer screen. "I need it fixed immediately." "Yes, ma'am," Ethan replied, moving toward the desk. "I'll try not to disturb you," as he set down his toolbox and moved behind her desk. His eyes caught on something that made his heart skip a beat. Among the few personal items in the otherwise impersonal office was a framed black-and-white photograph. It showed a small boy, maybe 3 years old, clutching a wooden rocking horse. The boy's dark eyes stared at the camera with innocent wonder. Ethan froze, a strange buzzing filling his ears. That toy. He recognized it instantly. The carved mane, the distinctive star pattern on the horse's flank. It couldn't be. "That photo," he murmured, his voice suddenly hoarse. "That toy horse the boy is holding." Victoria Langford's head snapped up, her steely gray eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" Ethan couldn't look away from the photograph. "I'm sorry, it's just... I had the same toy as a child, identical. It was the only thing I had when they found me at St. Michael's Orphanage." Victoria stood abruptly, her face draining of color. "What did you say?" she repeated, but her voice was different now, fragile, barely above a whisper. "The horse," Ethan said, pointing at the photo. "I've had the same one my whole life. It was with me when I was abandoned at the orphanage. I was around 3. He hesitated, then added, "The toy's a little beat up now, but it's got the same star marking on the flank." Victoria stared at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Her eyes traveled over his features, his dark brown eyes, the strong line of his jaw, the small birthmark near his left eyebrow. Her hand trembled as she reached for her desk to steady herself. "Your name," she said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "What's your full name?" "Ethan Cole, ma'am." "And your parents?" Ethan's expression shuddered slightly. "I don't have any. Like I said, I grew up at St. Michael's. They found me on their doorstep when I was 3. No note, no identification. Just me and that wooden horse." Victoria sank back into her chair, visibly shaken. "When?" "September 12th, 1995. The date seemed to hit Victoria like a physical blow. "Oh my God," she whispered. She pressed her fingers against her lips, trying to contain the emotion threatening to overflow, confused and increasingly uncomfortable. Ethan shifted his weight. "Ms. Langford, are you okay? Should I call someone?" "No." The word came out sharply. Then, more controlled, "No, please, just give me a moment." She turned to look out the window, her profile rigid with tension. When she turned back, her expression was composed, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Mr. Cole, What I'm about to ask will sound strange, but it's important. Would you be willing to sit down? There's something I need to tell you." Ethan hesitated, then slowly nodded. Victoria gestured to the chair across from her desk. "That photograph you noticed," she began, her voice steadier now. "It's of my son Matthew. He was born on June 3rd, 1992. She paused, seeming to gather her strength. "I was told he died of complications after a high fever when he was 3 years old, but the body was cremated quickly before I could see him." Ethan listened, bewildered by the turn of conversation, but unable to look away from the raw pain in Victoria's eyes. "I never believed it," she continued. "Something felt wrong. I hired investigators for years, but they found nothing. Eventually, everyone told me I needed to accept the truth and move on." Her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "The rocking horse in that photo was custom made by an artisan in Vermont. Only one was ever produced with that star pattern." The implications of what she was saying slowly dawned on Ethan. A chill ran down his spine. "You think I'm—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. It was too absurd, too life-altering to voice aloud. "I don't know," Victoria said, her voice barely audible. "But you have his eyes, and that birthmark. Matthew had the same one, and the horse, the timing. It's too much to be coincidence." Ethan stood abruptly. "Ms. Langford, I came here to fix an outlet, not to—" He gestured vaguely, struggling for words. "I know how this sounds," Victoria said quickly. "But please, before you leave, would you be willing to take a DNA test? I'll cover all costs, use the most reputable lab. If I'm wrong, I'll never contact you again." Ethan stared at her, his world tilting on its axis. The desperate hope in Victoria Langford's eyes made his chest tighten. "I don't know," he said honestly. "This is a lot to process." "Of course." Victoria pulled a business card from a silver case and wrote something on the back. "This is my personal number, please. Think about it." As Ethan took the card, their fingers brushed, and something unspoken passed between them. A flicker of recognition neither could explain. He pocketed the card, picked up his toolbox, and headed for the door, his mind reeling. At the threshold, he paused and looked back at Victoria Langford, who stood by her desk looking suddenly fragile and lost against the backdrop of the Chicago skyline. "I'll think about it," he said, and then he was gone, leaving Victoria alone with the photograph of a little boy clutching a wooden horse, and the first real hope she'd felt in 27 years. Chicago, 1992. Victoria Langford Hale cradled her newborn son, her heart so full it threatened to burst. Little Matthew's tiny fingers wrapped around her index finger with surprising strength, his dark eyes, so like her own, gazing up at her with innocent wonder. "He's perfect," she whispered, brushing her lips against his downy head. From the doorway of the hospital room, Richard Hale watched, his handsome face arranged in what appeared to be a proud smile. But behind his blue eyes, calculations were already taking place. "The Langford heir," he said, approaching the bed. "My son." Victoria didn't notice the emphasis he placed on the possessive. She was too lost in the miracle of Matthew's perfect face, his tiny nose, the small birthmark near his left eyebrow, at 25. Victoria had inherited controlling interest in Langford Industries following her father's unexpected death. Her marriage to Richard, a charismatic investment banker with old money connections, had seemed like fate. Now, with Matthew's birth, her happiness felt complete. What Victoria didn't see was how Richard's smile disappeared when she looked away. She didn't know about the mounting gambling debts, or his increasing resentment at playing second fiddle to his wife in the boardroom. Most importantly, she didn't know that under the terms of her father's will, if Victoria died before Matthew turned 21, Richard would control the Langford fortune only as a trustee. The money would ultimately go to Matthew, not him. But if Matthew weren't in the picture, 3 days after Victoria brought Matthew home, her sister Margaret arrived. At 30, Margaret Langford had spent her life in Victoria's shadow, less beautiful, passed over for leadership of the company despite being the older sibling. Her resentment had calcified into something ugly and dangerous. "He's certainly a Langford," Margaret said, studying the baby with cool detachment. "Those eyes, just like father's." Later, when Victoria was resting, Margaret and Richard sat in his study, drinking scotch. "The will is ironclad," Richard said, swirling the amber liquid. "Everything goes to Matthew eventually. I'm just the caretaker." Margaret's lips tightened. "While my brilliant little sister gets everything and I get the scraps." She drained her glass. "If only there'd been an accident before he was born." "It's not too late for accidents," Richard said quietly. Their eyes met in silent understanding. 3 weeks later, Victoria woke in a panic to find Matthew's crib empty. She screamed for Richard, who rushed in, apparently confused. "He was just here," Victoria cried. "Someone's taken him." The police came. The investigation was swift but ultimately fruitless. Security cameras had been disabled. No fingerprints. No witnesses. No ransom demands. 3 days of desperate searching yielded nothing. Then, as Victoria sat hollow-eyed in Matthew's nursery, Richard entered with a doctor. "Mrs. Hale," the doctor said gently. "I'm so sorry, we found your son." Victoria's hopes soared, then crashed at the doctor's grim expression. "He was discovered in Lincoln Park," Richard interjected before the doctor could continue. "Exposure. They think he'd been there since the night he disappeared." Victoria's anguished scream echoed through the Langford mansion. The doctor administered a sedative. Later, when Victoria insisted on seeing her son, she was told the body had already been cremated due to advanced decomposition. "It was for the best," Richard said, holding her as she sobbed. "You wouldn't want to remember him that way." What Victoria never knew was that on that same night, a small boy with dark eyes and a birthmark near his eyebrow was left wrapped in a blanket on the steps of St. Michael's orphanage on the other side of Chicago, clutching a wooden rocking horse, the one Victoria had commissioned from a Vermont artisan as Matthew's first birthday gift. Sister Agnes found him just before dawn, shivering, but otherwise unharmed. There was no note, no identification, just a frightened child and his toy. "What's your name, little one?" she asked gently. The boy could only say what sounded like Ethan, though whether it was his name or some other word, Sister Agnes couldn't tell. That became his name, Ethan. The orphanage gave him the last name Cole, after the street where St. Michael's stood. In the weeks that followed, Ethan would wake crying in the night, asking for Mama, but eventually, those cries stopped. Children are resilient. By his 4th birthday, the memories of his previous life had faded to nothing more than occasional nightmares and a strange attachment to the wooden rocking horse he refused to be parted from. Meanwhile, Victoria Langford Hale retreated into a shell of herself. She underwent therapy, took medication, but the light had gone out of her eyes. She threw herself into work, becoming a formidable businesswoman known for her steely resolve and cool detachment. Richard's plan worked perfectly. For a while, with Matthew gone, he had effective control of Victoria's fortune through her, but he hadn't counted on Victoria's resilience. After 5 years of grief and depression, she began to ask questions. Why had there been no body for her to bury? Why had the police investigation been closed so quickly? Why did Richard seem so unaffected by their son's death? She hired private investigators who found disturbing discrepancies, but no concrete proof of foul play. When she confronted Richard, he painted her as emotionally unstable, unable to accept the tragic loss of their child. Victoria filed for divorce. Richard fought viciously, but Victoria's legal team was better. She reclaimed her maiden name and took back control of Langford Industries. Richard was left with a settlement that, while substantial, was a fraction of what he'd hoped to control. Margaret, fearing exposure, distanced herself from Richard, but continued to work at Langford Industries, playing the role of supportive sister, while secretly undermining Victoria at every turn. Over the years, Victoria never stopped looking for answers. She kept a private investigator on retainer, following up on every lead, no matter how tenuous. She established a foundation for missing children, hoping that by helping others, she might find some peace. But she never stopped believing that somewhere, somehow, her son might still be alive. At St. Michael's, Ethan grew into a quiet, thoughtful boy with a talent for understanding how things worked. By 12, he could fix almost anything that broke around the orphanage. Toasters, radios, the ancient heating system. His foster placements never lasted. Families wanted younger children, or found Ethan too reserved. So he remained at St. Michael's, finding purpose in his ability to fix broken things. even as he couldn't repair the inexplicable sense of loss that sometimes washed over him when he held the weathered wooden horse at night. On his 18th birthday, Ethan left St. Michael's with a high school diploma, a small savings account from odd jobs, and his wooden horse. He apprenticed with an electrician and eventually earned his license. By 30, he had his own small business, Cole Electrical. He never sought his birth parents. What was the point? They hadn't wanted him. He'd built a life for himself from nothing. He had his work, a small circle of friends, and recently Claire, a kindergarten teacher with a warm smile who somehow saw past his guarded exterior to the man beneath. It was enough, or so he told himself, on the nights when dreams of a woman with dark eyes like his own left him restless until dawn, until the day a routine job brought him to the 20th floor of Langford Industries, face to face with a photograph that would unravel everything he thought he knew about himself. Ethan sat in his truck for 20 minutes after leaving Langford Industries, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The business card Victoria Langford had given him seemed to burn in his pocket. "This is insane," he muttered to himself, finally starting the engine. Completely insane. But he couldn't shake the image of that photograph, the wooden horse identical to his own, safely tucked away in a box in his apartment closet. Nor could he forget the look in Victoria Langford's eyes. Desperate hope mixed with bone-deep fear. The evening traffic crawled as his mind raced. What if she was right? What if his entire identity was built on a lie? But then, what kind of monsters would steal a child from his mother and abandon him at an orphanage? By the time he pulled up to the small bungalow he shared with Claire, Ethan had convinced himself it was all a bizarre coincidence. He'd politely declined Victoria Langford's request for a DNA test, and that would be the end of it. Claire was in the kitchen when he walked in, her blonde hair tied in a messy bun as she stirred something that smelled deliciously of garlic and tomatoes. She turned with a smile that faltered when she saw his expression. "What happened?" she asked, setting down her wooden spoon. Ethan dropped his toolbox and sank into a kitchen chair. "You're not going to believe this." He told her everything. The photo, the wooden horse, Victoria Langford's desperate request. Claire listened without interrupting, her blue eyes widening. "So you're telling me," she said slowly when he finished, "that the CEO of Langford Industries thinks you're her long-lost son, who supposedly died 27 years ago." "I know how it sounds," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. Claire was quiet for a moment, then went to their bedroom. She returned carrying a shoebox, which she placed on the table. "Let's see it," she said quietly. Ethan opened the box and carefully removed the wooden rocking horse. Its once bright paint was chipped, the mane worn smooth from years of a child's hands, but the craftsmanship was still evident, and the distinctive star on its flank was clearly visible. "You said this was the only thing you had from before the orphanage," Claire said. "Your only connection to wherever you came from." Ethan nodded, running his thumb over the star, a gesture that had always comforted him, though he couldn't have explained why. "What if she's right, Ethan?" Claire reached across the table and took his free hand. "Don't you want to know the truth?" "I don't know," he admitted. "My whole life, I've been Ethan Cole. If she's right, then who am I? Matthew Langford, rich kid who was supposed to inherit an empire. That's not me, Claire." "No," she agreed. "But maybe knowing where you came from doesn't have to change who you've become." She squeezed his hand. "Do the test. If it comes back negative, nothing changes. If it's positive, well, we'll figure it out together." Ethan stared at the wooden horse, its glass eyes seeming to stare back at him across decades of silence. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll call her tomorrow." Across town, in her penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Victoria Langford paced anxiously. She'd left the office early, unable to focus after the encounter with Ethan Cole. Now, she alternated between staring at her phone, willing it to ring, and gazing at the photo of Matthew. When the phone finally rang, she jumped. But it wasn't Ethan. It was Margaret. "You left the budget meeting," Margaret said without preamble. "That's not like you." Victoria hesitated. She and Margaret had rebuilt a fragile relationship after the divorce from Richard, but they weren't close. Still, Margaret was her only family. "Something came up," she said carefully. "A personal matter. Is everything all right?" Margaret's voice held a note of concern that seemed genuine. "I'm not sure," Victoria admitted. "I may have found some information about Matthew." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Vicky," Margaret said, her voice strained. "It's been 27 years. You promised your therapist you'd stop chasing ghosts." "This is different," Victoria insisted. "There's a man, an electrician who came to fix something in my office. He recognized Matthew's rocking horse, said he had the same one when he was left at an orphanage. He even has the same birthmark, Margaret, and his eyes." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "What's this man's name?" Margaret finally asked, her voice oddly flat. "Ethan Cole. He owns a small electrical company. And you think he's Matthew, Victoria? That's..." Margaret paused. "Have you spoken to Dr. Werner about this? This isn't a delusion." "Margaret," Victoria snapped. "I've asked him to take a DNA test. And if it's negative, another disappointment, another setback in your recovery, then at least I'll know." Victoria's voice softened. "I have to be sure, Margaret, wouldn't you? If it were your child." After they hung up, Margaret sat motionless in her office at Langford Industries, her face ashen. Then she pulled out her own phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "We have a problem," she said when the call was answered. "A big one." Richard Hale's hands shook slightly as he poured himself a generous scotch in his downtown condo. At 60, he was still handsome in a silver fox way, though his lifestyle had added significant weight to his once athletic frame. The divorce from Victoria had cost him dearly, but he'd rebuilt, establishing a modestly successful investment firm catering to Chicago's elite. "Are you absolutely sure?" he asked Margaret, who sat perched on his leather sofa. Victoria seemed convinced, Margaret replied. "She's requested a DNA test." "After all these years," Richard muttered. "It's impossible. The boy we left at that orphanage couldn't possibly..." "Well, apparently he could," Margaret cut in sharply. "And if that DNA test comes back positive, we're both finished. You realize that, don't you? It's not just about the money anymore. It's kidnapping, Richard. Conspiracy. Prison time." Richard drained his glass. "We need to find out more about this Ethan Cole, and we need to make sure that DNA test never happens, or that if it does, the results disappear." The next morning, Ethan called Victoria and agreed to the DNA test. They met that afternoon at a private medical facility in the Gold Coast neighborhood. The procedure itself was quick and anticlimactic. A simple cheek swab, sealed in labeled vials. "The lab I've chosen is the best in the country," Victoria said as they stood awkwardly in the facility's lobby afterward. "They've agreed to expedite the results. We should know in 3 days." Ethan nodded, hands shoved deep in his jeans pockets. "And until then," Victoria hesitated, Would you like to get a coffee or lunch? I understand if you don't want to, but..." "Coffee's fine," Ethan said, surprising himself with the answer. At a quiet cafe around the corner, they sat across from each other, steam rising from ceramic mugs between them. Victoria studied his face with undisguised wonder. "I never stopped looking," she said softly, "even when everyone told me I was crazy, that I needed to accept Matthew's death and move on. If, and it's still a big if, I am your son," Ethan said carefully. "What happened? How does a baby go from being supposedly dead to abandoned at an orphanage with nothing but a toy horse?" Victoria's face darkened. "I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. If you are Matthew, then someone took you from your crib and faked your death. The only people with access to our home that night were household staff, all of whom had been with the family for years. And..." she hesitated. "And..." Ethan prompted. "And my ex-husband, Richard, and my sister, Margaret. But they would never..." She trailed off, her certainty clearly wavering. "Why would anyone do that?" Victoria looked into her coffee. "Money, control of Langford Industries. Under my father's will, if I died before you turned 21, Richard would control everything as your trustee. But if you weren't in the picture..." Ethan's stomach knotted. The implications were staggering and disturbing. "I should go," he said abruptly, standing. "I have another job this afternoon." Victoria rose as well. "Of course, I'll call you as soon as I have the results." As Ethan walked away, he didn't see the man in the corner of the cafe snap several photos on his phone, nor did he notice the black sedan that began to follow him back to his truck. Meanwhile, across town, A different man in a maintenance uniform used a stolen keycard to enter the records room at St. Michael's Orphanage, seeking the intake files from September 1995. Richard Hale's penthouse office featured floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Chicago's skyline. But he wasn't admiring the scenery. He was staring at photos of Ethan Cole displayed on his computer screen. His jaw clenched tight. "It's him," Margaret said, pacing behind Richard's desk. "Look at that birthmark, those eyes. It's Matthew. After all these years," Richard murmured, zooming in on Ethan's face. "How the hell did this happen?" "It doesn't matter how it happened," Margaret snapped. "What matters is what we do now. If that DNA test confirms he's Matthew, we're both facing serious prison time, not to mention financial ruin." Richard swiveled in his chair to face her. "You think I don't know that? Everything I've rebuilt since Victoria divorced me would be gone. And you'd lose your position at Langford, all your shares, everything." Margaret stopped pacing. At 55, she had the same aristocratic bone structure as her younger sister, but years of bitterness had carved hard lines around her mouth and between her eyebrows. "We need a plan," she said. "First, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. My source at the lab says the DNA results will be ready in 3 days." "Can your source make those results disappear?" Richard asked. Margaret shook her head. "Too risky. The lab director is close friends with Victoria, but we have other options." She pulled a chair close to Richard's desk and lowered her voice. "We can discredit Victoria, make it look like this is another of her desperate attempts to find her dead son." "How?" Margaret's smile was cold. "I've kept copies of all her psychiatric records from when she was in therapy after Matthew's death, with a few subtle alterations. We can make it appear that she's suffering from delusional disorder, fixated on finding her son despite all evidence that he's gone." Richard nodded slowly. "It could work. The board already thinks she's too emotional for a CEO. If we can convince them she's mentally unstable." "Exactly. We present the evidence at the next board meeting. Push for a vote of no confidence. Once she's removed as CEO, no one will believe her claims about some random electrician being the lost Langford heir." "And what about the electrician himself?" Richard asked. "Even without Victoria, he could still pursue this." Margaret's expression hardened. "Leave that to me. I've already hired someone to deal with Mr. Cole. Nothing permanent. Just enough to convince him that pursuing this matter would be extremely unwise." Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor of his living room. Old papers spread around him. After meeting with Victoria, he'd called Sister Agnes, who still worked at St. Michael's. Despite her advanced age, her memory remained sharp. "I remember the night you arrived like it was yesterday," she had told him. "Such a frightened little boy, clutching that wooden horse like it was your lifeline. The police investigated, of course, but there were no reports of missing children matching your description. It was as if you appeared out of nowhere." Now, Ethan was going through every document from his childhood, looking for clues, inconsistencies, anything that might shed light on his origins. Claire sat on the couch behind him, helping sort through the papers. "Here's something odd," she said, holding up a yellowed document. "This is your intake form from St. Michael's. Look at the date. It says you were brought in on September 15th, 1995. "That's right," Ethan nodded. "That's my official found date. But look at this medical exam form," Claire continued. "It's dated September 10th, 5 days earlier, and it's got a different doctor's name than all your other medical records." Ethan took the paper, frowning. "That is weird. And the handwriting is different too." He set the paper aside in a new pile. "Add it to the suspicious stack." The doorbell rang, startling them both. Claire went to answer it while Ethan continued sorting through documents. "Ethan," Claire called, an odd note in her voice. "There's someone here to see you." He looked up to find Claire standing in the doorway with a man in his late 60s, thin and professorial with wire-rimmed glasses and a worn leather messenger bag. "Mr. Cole, I'm Daniel Phillips," the man said. "I'm a journalist. I was hoping I might have a word with you about Victoria Langford." Ethan stood slowly, instantly wary. "How did you know I had any connection to Victoria Langford?" Phillips raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I've been investigating Richard Hale for nearly a decade. I have sources in many places, including the private lab where you and Mrs. Langford gave DNA samples this morning." "Why are you investigating Richard Hale?" Claire asked, moving protectively closer to Ethan. It's a long story, Philip sighed. May I sit down? I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. Reluctantly, Ethan cleared a space on the couch, and they all sat. Phillips removed a thick file from his messenger bag. I was a financial reporter for the Tribune back when Richard Hale married Victoria Langford, he began. On the surface, it was a perfect match. The beautiful heiress and the charming investment banker. But something about Hale never sat right with me. I started digging into his background, his finances. He opened the file, revealing newspaper clippings, financial records, and photographs. What I found was a pattern of suspicious investments, missing funds, connections to questionable individuals, nothing I could definitively prove, but enough smoke to suggest a substantial fire. What does this have to do with me? Ethan asked. Phillips fixed him with a steady gaze. When Matthew Langford supposedly died, I was assigned to write a piece about the tragedy. The circumstances seemed convenient, too convenient. An infant dies, is cremated immediately, no autopsy, and suddenly Richard Hale has effective control of the Langford fortune through his grieving wife. I tried to investigate, but I hit walls at every turn. Then my editor pulled me off the story. Pressure from above, he said. Claire looked at Ethan, concern etched on her face. You think Richard Hale had something to do with Matthew's disappearance? I've always suspected it. Phillips nodded. But I could never prove anything, until now, perhaps. He turned his intense gaze on Ethan. If you are Matthew Langford, Mr. Cole, you're not just heir to a fortune. You're living proof of a crime that's gone unpunished for nearly 3 decades. Ethan stood, pacing the small living room. This is insane. Yesterday I was just a guy running a small electrical business. Now you're telling me I might be the victim of some elaborate kidnapping plot. I understand it's a lot to take in, Philip said gently, but I came here tonight to warn you as much as to gather information. If you are Matthew Langford, and if Richard Hale was behind your disappearance, you're in danger. He has too much to lose if the truth comes out. As if on cue, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. Stay away from Victoria Langford. Some questions are better left unanswered. He showed it to Claire and Phillips, his face grim. It started already, Phillips said quietly. They're watching you. Probably have been since you met with Victoria. Claire's face paled. What do we do? Phillips reached into his bag again and pulled out a small device. First, we sweep for bugs. Then we talk strategy. Because if those DNA results come back positive, Mr. Cole, your life as you know it is over, one way or another. In her office at Langford Industries, Victoria stared at her computer screen, lost in thought. She'd been unable to focus on work since meeting with Ethan. Instead, she'd spent hours looking at old photos of Matthew, comparing them to the mental image she had of Ethan Cole. The resemblance was uncanny. But was it just her desperate hope seeing connections that weren't there? A knock at her door broke her reverie. Margaret entered without waiting for a response. You missed the marketing presentation, Margaret said, her tone carefully neutral. The team was disappointed. I'll apologize tomorrow, Victoria replied, closing the photo viewer on her computer. I had something important to attend to. Margaret sat in one of the chairs facing Victoria's desk. This is about that electrician, isn't it, Vicky? I'm worried about you. You've been down this road before. This is different, Victoria interrupted. You didn't see him, Margaret. You didn't see how he reacted to Matthew's photo, to the rocking horse. I just don't want to see you hurt again, Margaret said, reaching across the desk to squeeze Victoria's hand. You've been doing so well these past few years. Victoria studied her sister's face. For a moment, she thought she saw something flicker in Margaret's eyes, something hard and calculating. But it was gone so quickly, she convinced herself she'd imagined it. The DNA results will be ready in 3 days, Victoria said. Then we'll know for sure. Margaret nodded, standing to leave. Yes, then we'll know. At the door, she paused. Whatever happens, Vicky, I'm here for you. Remember that. As the door closed behind her sister, Victoria felt a chill despite the warm office. Something in Margaret's tone had set off alarm bells in her mind, the same instinct that had served her well in countless boardroom battles. She reached for her phone and dialed the lab director, an old friend from college. Julia, Victoria Langford. I need a favor regarding those DNA samples I submitted today. I want the results sent directly to me. No copies, no records in your system. And I need absolute discretion. Yes, I know it's unusual. It's also extremely important. Thank you. Victoria hung up, a sense of foreboding settling over her. If Ethan Cole was indeed her son, then someone had orchestrated an elaborate deception 27 years ago. Someone who might go to great lengths to ensure the truth remained buried. The DNA results arrived 2 days earlier than expected. Victoria was in a budget meeting when her assistant slipped her a note. Dr. Calloway on line 1. Urgent. She excused herself immediately, ignoring Margaret's sharp look. Julia, Victoria said when she reached her office, her heart hammering in her chest. You have the results. I do. Dr. Julia Calloway's voice was steady but warm. Victoria, I ran the test 3 times to be absolutely certain. A moment of silence stretched between them. And Victoria barely recognized her own voice. It's a match. 99,998% probability of maternity. Ethan Cole is your biological son. Victoria sank into her chair, tears streaming down her face. After 27 years of searching, of hoping against hope, of being told she was delusional for not accepting her child's death, the truth was finally confirmed. Victoria, are you all right? Julia asked, concerned by the silence. Yes, Victoria managed. Thank you, Julia. And you're certain no one else has access to these results? Absolutely. I ran the tests myself after hours. The samples have been destroyed, and the results exist only in the sealed envelope I just had couriered to your penthouse. There's no electronic record. After hanging up, Victoria sat motionless, overwhelmed by emotion. Then she reached for her phone again and dialed Ethan's number with trembling fingers. Ethan was rewiring an old building in Wicker Park when his phone rang. Seeing Victoria's number, he stepped away from his crew, wiping sweat from his brow. Hello, it's Victoria Langford. Her voice was thick with emotion. The results came early. Can you meet me today? Something in her tone told him everything he needed to know. The test was positive, wasn't it? A pause. Yes, you're my son. Ethan, you're Matthew. The world seemed to tilt around him, despite suspecting this outcome. Hearing the confirmation hit him like a physical blow. I need to finish this job, he said mechanically. Can I come to your office around 4? Of course. And Ethan, please be careful. I don't know who might be watching. The warning sent a chill through him, reminding him of Philip's concerns and the threatening text. I will, he promised. After hanging up, he stared at his phone, then called Claire. It's confirmed, he said. When she answered, the DNA matched. I'm going to meet her at 4. I'm coming with you, Claire said immediately. No, I need to do this alone. Ethan Cole, she interrupted, her voice firm. You just found out your entire identity is different than you thought. You're not doing this alone. I'll meet you at Langford Industries at 4, period. Her certainty steadied him. Okay, thank you. As he returned to work, Ethan didn't notice the black sedan parked across the street, or the man inside taking photos with a telephoto lens. At precisely 4 p.m., Ethan and Claire arrived at Langford Industries. This time, instead of being led to Victoria's office, they were escorted to a private conference room with frosted glass walls. Victoria was already waiting, her normally perfect composure cracking when she saw them. Thank you for coming, she said, her eyes never leaving Ethan's face. And you must be Claire. I'm glad he has you with him today. Claire nodded, squeezing Ethan's hand. You have the results, Ethan asked, still standing near the door. Victoria opened her briefcase and removed a sealed envelope, which she slid across the table. See for yourself. Ethan stared at the envelope for a long moment before finally sitting down and opening it. The medical terminology was complex, but the conclusion was clear. Probability of maternity, 99.9998%. He let out a slow breath. So it's true, I'm Matthew Langford. Yes, Victoria whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. My son. An awkward silence fell. Claire, sensing the tension, spoke up. What happens now, legally? I mean, does this change Matthew's status? Victoria tore her gaze from Ethan to address Claire. Potentially, yes. As my biological son, he has inheritance rights, but establishing his legal identity after so many years would be complicated. She turned back to Ethan. "But that's not why I wanted to find you. I just wanted to know the truth. To find my child." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, visibly struggling with the implications. "I need to understand what happened. How I ended up at St. Michael's." Victoria's expression darkened. "I've been piecing it together since we met. The only people with access to the nursery that night were household staff, all of whom had been with the family for years. My sister Margaret, and my then-husband Richard. The journalist who contacted me, Daniel Phillips. He thinks Richard was behind it. Something about controlling the Langford fortune if I was out of the picture." Victoria nodded grimly. "Under my father's will, if I died before you turned 21, Richard would control everything as your trustee. But if you weren't in the picture, and I died with no heirs, everything would go to Margaret, with Richard likely maintaining significant influence through her. So they took me, made you believe I was dead, and then what? Why not actually?" Ethan couldn't finish the sentence. "Kill you." Victoria's voice broke. "I don't know. Perhaps even they couldn't go that far. Or maybe they thought abandoning you at an orphanage was safer. Less chance of a murder investigation." Claire shuddered. "It's monstrous. Have you confronted them?" "Not yet. Without proof, it would be my word against theirs, and they'd paint me as a grieving mother desperate to believe her son is alive." Victoria fixed her gaze on Ethan. "But now we have proof, and we need to be very careful about how we proceed." "Why?" "We have the DNA results. Because Richard and Margaret have too much to lose. If this comes out, they could face kidnapping charges, conspiracy, fraud. They'd do anything to prevent that." As if on cue, Ethan's phone buzzed with another text message from the unknown number. "We know where you live. We know where Claire works. Walk away now." He showed it to Victoria and Claire, his expression hardening. "They're threatening you," Victoria said, her voice cold with fury. "This confirms they know we've connected. They're watching us. Let them," Ethan said, surprising himself with his resolve. "I'm not afraid of them." Claire's face had gone pale, but she nodded in agreement. "We can't let them get away with this." Victoria studied them both with newfound respect. "We'll need evidence beyond the DNA test. Proof that Richard and Margaret orchestrated your kidnapping. Phillips might be helpful there. He's been investigating Richard for years. I've been going through my orphanage records," Ethan added. "There are inconsistencies. A medical exam dated before my official arrival date, with different handwriting than my other records. That could suggest the records were falsified," Victoria said, leaning forward. "If we could find the doctor listed on that form." "I've tried. No one by that name practiced in Chicago in 1995. A fake name." "Then," Claire mused, "but maybe the handwriting could be matched to someone." Victoria suddenly straightened, her eyes widening. "Wait, the night nurse, Eliza Morton. She was on duty the night you disappeared. She was the one who first reported you missing, who swore she'd checked on you just an hour before and you were fine. She left the hospital shortly after your death was announced. I tried to find her years ago, but she seemed to have vanished. Could she have been involved?" Claire asked. "Or she knew something," Ethan suggested. "Something that made her run." Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my investigator. If Eliza Morton is still alive, we need to find her." As Victoria made the call, Ethan stared at the DNA results again, the scientific confirmation of what his heart had somehow already known. He was Matthew Langford, son of Victoria, heir to a fortune, victim of a crime so calculated it made his blood run cold. And now, nearly 3 decades later, the same people who had stolen him from his mother were threatening to hurt Claire, the woman he loved, to keep their secret buried. His hands curled into fists on the table. For years, he'd told himself that not knowing his origins didn't matter, that he'd built his identity from the ground up. But now, faced with the truth of his stolen past, Ethan felt something new awakening inside him. A determination to reclaim what was taken, to protect those he loved, and to make the perpetrators pay for what they'd done. In that moment, Ethan Cole began to understand what it meant to be a Langford, the Shady Grove retirement community in Kenosha. Wisconsin seemed an unlikely place to find answers about a decades-old kidnapping. Yet 3 days after their meeting at Langford Industries, Ethan, Claire, and Daniel Phillips found themselves walking through its manicured gardens toward a small cottage at the far end of the property. "You're sure this is her?" Ethan asked, glancing at the investigator's report in Phillips's hand. "As sure as we can be," Phillips replied. "Eliza Morton changed her name to Elizabeth Martin shortly after leaving Chicago in 1995. She's worked as a private nurse in small towns across the Midwest, never staying in one place longer than a few years. She retired here 5 years ago. Victoria had wanted to come, but they'd agreed her presence might be too alarming for the former nurse. Instead, she was waiting at a nearby hotel, anxious for news." Claire squeezed Ethan's hand as they approached the cottage door. "Remember, we're just asking questions. Don't accuse her of anything right away." Ethan nodded, though his heart hammered in his chest. This woman might hold the key to understanding how he'd been stolen from his crib 27 years ago. Phillips knocked. After a long moment, the door opened to reveal a thin woman in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and wary blue eyes that widened when she saw the 3 strangers on her doorstep. "Ms. Martin?" Phillips asked politely. "My name is Daniel Phillips. I'm a journalist working on a story about Langford Industries. These are my associates. We were hoping to speak with you about your time working at Chicago Memorial Hospital." The color drained from Eliza Morton's face. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, starting to close the door. "I've never worked in Chicago." Ethan stepped forward quickly. "Please, Miss Morton, we know you were the night nurse on duty when Matthew Langford disappeared from his crib in 1992. We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to understand what happened." Eliza's eyes locked on Ethan's face, recognition dawning in her expression. "Those eyes," she whispered, "just like Victoria's." Her hand trembled on the door. "You're him, aren't you?" "You're the baby." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, I'm Matthew Langford, though I grew up as Ethan Cole at St. Michael's Orphanage." Tears filled the elderly woman's eyes. She glanced past them, scanning the gardens nervously. "Come inside." Quickly. The cottage was small but tidy, filled with crocheted blankets and framed photographs of landscapes, but notably, no people. Eliza led them to a sitting area, her hands shaking as she lowered herself into an armchair. "I've been waiting for this day," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dreading it, praying for it all these years. I've lived with the guilt, telling myself you were probably better off not knowing." "Knowing what?" Claire asked gently. Eliza studied Ethan's face, her eyes filled with a mixture of wonder and regret. "That you were stolen, that I helped cover it up, that your mother has spent 27 years believing you were dead because I lied." Phillips removed a small recorder from his pocket. "Ms. Morton, would you mind if I record your statement?" She shook her head. "I don't care anymore. I'm old. I've been running for decades. It's time for the truth." As Phillips set up the recorder, Ethan leaned forward. Why did you do it?" Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "Money, fear, stupidity, take your pick." She took a shuddering breath. "I was working the night shift in the maternity ward when Mr. Hale approached me, said he had a delicate proposition. He offered me $50,000 to look the other way while he took you from your crib. Said it was just a custody issue, that he and Mrs. Langford were having problems, and he needed to get you away from her. And you believed him." Claire couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. "No," Eliza admitted. "Not really, but I was desperate. My husband had gambling debts. We were about to lose our house. And Mr. Hale, he made it clear that refusing wasn't an option. He knew people, he said. People who could make problems for me and my family. So you let him take Matthew?" Phillips prompted. "Yes, I went on my break and made sure the security cameras were disabled. When I came back an hour later, the baby was gone. I raised the alarm, pretended I'd just discovered the empty crib." Her voice broke. "I thought that was it, that he was taking the child to relatives, like he said. But then 2 days later, the hospital called the Langford residence. The baby was dead, they said. Sudden infant death syndrome." Ethan's blood ran cold. "They faked my death." Eliza nodded miserably. "I was called into Dr. Werner's office. He was the chief of pediatrics, but I'd never seen him look so nervous. He showed me a death certificate for Matthew Langford, told me to sign it as the attending nurse. When I hesitated, he reminded me that I'd been the one to leave the baby unattended, that if I didn't cooperate, I'd be charged with criminal negligence at the very least. Did you ever see the body? Ethan asked, the question feeling surreal. No. The doctor said the body had already been transported to the funeral home at the family's request for immediate cremation. Her eyes met Ethan's. I knew something was wrong. That's not protocol for an infant death, especially unexpected ones. There should have been an autopsy, but I was in too deep already. When did you realize I wasn't actually dead? Not until years later, Eliza said. I'd left Chicago, changed my name, but I kept tabs on the Langford family through news articles. In 1998, there was a piece about Victoria Langford's charitable foundation for missing children. It mentioned that she'd never fully accepted her son's death, that she believed he might have been kidnapped. Eliza's hands twisted in her lap. That was when I started putting it together. I remembered Mr. Hale's strange behavior, the rushed cremation, the way he'd insisted there be no viewing of the body, and his sister-in-law, Margaret Langford. She'd been at the hospital that night too. I hadn't thought it significant at the time. Margaret was there, Phillips interjected sharply. Yes. I saw her in the corridor outside the maternity ward, speaking with Mr. Hale. They seemed intense, secretive. Eliza shook her head. I should have gone to the police then, but I was implicated in whatever had happened, and I was afraid. What about Dr. Werner? Claire asked. Was he part of the conspiracy? I don't know for sure. He retired abruptly a few months after the incident. Moved to Arizona, I think. Eliza looked at Ethan, her eyes pleading. I've lived with this guilt for 27 years. I convinced myself you were probably adopted by a good family, that you were happy somewhere, that maybe it really was better for you to be away from whatever dysfunctional situation Mr. Hale was describing. Ethan processed this information silently, his emotions a turbulent mix of anger, confusion, and a strange sort of relief at finally understanding. Do you have any proof? Phillips asked. Anything that corroborates your story? Records? Notes? The original death certificate? Eliza rose slowly and walked to a bookshelf. Behind a row of romance novels, she removed a small lockbox. I kept this all these years. Insurance, I suppose. Or penance. She opened the box and removed a yellowed envelope, which she handed to Ethan. The original draft of the death certificate. Before the official one was filed, notice there's no cause of death listed. And this, she pulled out a bank statement, shows the deposit of $50,000 into my account the day after you disappeared. I've never touched that money. It's been sitting in a separate account all these years. Gathering interest? I always thought that someday, somehow, I might be able to make amends. Ethan stared at the documents. Physical evidence of the conspiracy that had stolen his identity and separated him from his mother for nearly 3 decades. Would you be willing to testify to all this? Phillips asked. Legally, on the record. Eliza's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. Yes, it's time. She turned to Ethan. I can never undo what I did, but maybe I can help make it right. Ethan looked at the fragile elderly woman, torn between anger at her complicity and understanding of her fear. Thank you for telling the truth now, he said finally. It matters. As they prepared to leave, Eliza grabbed Ethan's arm. Be careful, she whispered. Richard Hale and Margaret Langford. They're dangerous people. They've protected this secret for 27 years. They won't give up easily. In the rental car, driving back to the hotel where Victoria waited, Phillips reviewed his notes with excitement. This is the breakthrough we needed. A first-hand witness who places both Richard and Margaret at the scene. Evidence of payment. Proof the death was fabricated. Claire watched Ethan's profile as he stared out the window. Are you okay? She asked softly. I don't know, he admitted. Finding out you were stolen from your crib as an infant, that people conspired to fake your death. It's a lot to process. We should call Victoria, Phillips said. She'll want to know right away. Ethan nodded, pulling out his phone. But before he could dial, a notification appeared. An email from an anonymous address. The subject line made his blood run cold. Drop it or she dies. He opened the email to find a photo of Victoria Langford entering her penthouse building, the crosshairs of a rifle scope superimposed over her heart. They're bluffing, Phillips said, after examining the threatening email. It's a scare tactic. Are you willing to bet my mother's life on that? Ethan countered. Still jarred by how naturally the word mother had slipped out, they'd returned to the hotel to find Victoria waiting anxiously in the lobby after sharing Eliza Morton's revelations. They showed her the threatening email. Victoria's face remained impressively calm. "It's not the first threat I've received in business, but the timing is concerning. We need to go to the police," Claire insisted. Philip shook his head. "With what?" "An anonymous email that could have come from anyone. Richard Hale has connections throughout Chicago, including the police department. We need concrete evidence first." Victoria nodded in agreement. "Daniel's right. We need to build our case carefully." Ethan paced the hotel room, frustration evident in every step. Meanwhile, they're watching us, threatening us. We're exposed. A knock at the door silenced everyone. Phillips moved to answer it, checking the peephole cautiously before opening the door to reveal a young man in a tailored suit, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Ms. Langford? I'm Alex Dawson, Margaret Langford's personal assistant." His voice was tight with anxiety. "I need to speak with you privately." Victoria rose, her expression guarded. "Anything you have to say can be said in front of my son and our friends." Alex's eyes widened as they shifted to Ethan, clearly noticing the resemblance between mother and son. I didn't realize." He swallowed hard. "Very well. May I come in?" Once the door was closed, Alex stood awkwardly, clutching his leather messenger bag. "I've been Ms. Langford's, Margaret's assistant for 3 years. I've seen and heard things I've tried to ignore, telling myself it wasn't my business. But this morning," he pulled a small recording device from his pocket. "Margaret had a private meeting with Richard Hale in her office. She specifically instructed me to hold all calls and make sure they weren't disturbed. But I've been suspicious for weeks. Ever since your meeting with the electrician." He glanced at Ethan. "With you, I guess. Margaret's been agitated, secretive, so I left my phone in the office." "Recording?" He pressed play. Margaret's voice emerged, tense and angry. "The nurse is a liability, Richard, if she talks." "She won't," Richard's voice interrupted. "She's been silent for 27 years. She's as implicated as we are. That reporter has been sniffing around. And now Victoria and the boy are meeting with him regularly. We need to end this now." "What are you suggesting?" "We can't just eliminate Victoria. The board would ask too many questions." "Not eliminate, discredit. I have her old psychiatric records. With some creative editing, we can paint her as delusional, obsessed with finding her dead child. Then we deal with the electrician. Make it clear that pursuing this will cost him everything. His business, his girlfriend, maybe more. And if that doesn't work," a pause, "then we consider more permanent solutions." Alex stopped the recording, his face pale. "There's more, but that's the relevant part. I also brought these." He removed a flash drive from his bag. Copies of emails between Richard and Margaret dating back 3 years. They discuss something they call the Matthew situation several times, especially whenever Victoria showed interest in child-related charities or missing persons cases. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she took the flash drive. "Why are you doing this?" "Alex, you must realize you're risking your career. Possibly more." Alex looked down. "My younger brother was adopted for years. He searched for his birth mother when he finally found her last year. It changed his life, gave him a sense of completion he'd never had. When I realized Margaret might have been involved in separating a mother from her child," he shrugged uncomfortably. "Some things are more important than a job." Victoria studied the young man. "Do Margaret and Richard know you're here?" "No. Margaret thinks I'm at a dental appointment, but they'll figure it out soon enough when I don't return to the office." "You can't go back there," Claire said. "It's not safe." "I know. I've already cleared out my apartment. I'm catching a flight to my brother's place in Portland tonight." He hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Margaret has scheduled an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I saw the presentation she's prepared. She's going to move for your removal as CEO, Miss Langford, on the grounds of mental instability. She has doctored psychological evaluations, witness statements about your obsession with finding your son. It's all fabricated, but it looks convincing. She's making her move," Phillips murmured, "trying to neutralize Victoria before we can gather more evidence." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Then we'll have to move faster, Alex. We'll need your testimony. You'll have it. he promised. But not in person. At least not yet. I can provide a sworn statement through a lawyer once I'm safely away from Chicago. After Alex left, the four of them sat in tense silence for a moment. We need to get to that board meeting, Ethan said finally. With everything we have, Eliza's statement, Alex's recording, the emails, it won't be enough, Victoria sighed. The board respects me, but Margaret has been cultivating relationships with the members for years. Without definitive proof that you're Matthew, the DNA test, Claire interjected. Helpful, but they could claim it was falsified. We need something irrefutable, something that proves not just that Ethan is Matthew, but that Richard and Margaret orchestrated the kidnapping. Phillips's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to the others, eyes bright with excitement. That was my contact at the Chicago Records Office. They've located Dr. Werner, the physician who signed Matthew's death certificate. He's alive, living in a retirement community in Scottsdale, Arizona, Ethan remembered from Eliza's testimony. Can we reach him? Better than that, Phillips grinned. My contact has a friend in the Scottsdale PD. She's willing to pay Dr. Werner a visit, show him Eliza Morton's statement, and see if he's willing to talk. If we're lucky, we might have his testimony by morning. It's still risky, Victoria warned. Even with Werner's testimony, it might not be enough to convince the board. Then we need a backup plan, Ethan said, surprising himself with his confidence. Something they won't expect. Claire studied him with newfound admiration. The Ethan she knew, quiet, reserved, practical, was transforming before her eyes. In his determination to uncover the truth and protect Victoria, she glimpsed the man he might have been if raised as Matthew Langford. Decisive, strategic, unafraid to confront powerful adversaries. I might have an idea, Claire said, pulling out her phone. My cousin works for the Tribune. If Phillips provides her with the facts, she could have a story ready to go, held until we give the word. If the board meeting goes south, we release everything to the press immediately. The threat of public exposure. Victoria nodded slowly. It might make the board hesitate before acting against me. And there's one more card we could play, Phillips added. Something I've been saving for the right moment. He opened his laptop, navigating to a folder labeled Hale, Financials. For years, I've been tracking Richard's more questionable business dealings. 6 months ago, I uncovered evidence that he's been laundering money through offshore accounts for several Chicago-based businessmen with ties to organized crime. I held off publishing because I couldn't conclusively prove his knowledge of the source funds. But combined with everything else, Ethan stared at the financial documents on Philip's screen, a plan forming in his mind. What if we approach Richard directly, offer him a deal, his testimony against Margaret in exchange for our silence about his financial crimes? Victoria considered this. Richard's always been self-serving. If he thought Margaret would sacrifice him to save herself, he might be willing to turn on her. Divide and conquer. Claire nodded. It could work. We'll need to move quickly, Phillips said. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Then we'd better get started, Victoria said, a steely determination in her voice. Richard first, I'll call him. Suggest a private meeting tonight, somewhere public, but discreet. As Victoria made the call, Ethan stepped onto the hotel room balcony, needing a moment alone. The Chicago skyline spread before him, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk fell. Somewhere in that city was the orphanage where he'd grown up, never knowing his true identity, and somewhere else was the Langford mansion, where he would have been raised if not for Richard and Margaret's scheme. For 27 years, he'd been Ethan Cole, a name assigned to him by strangers. Now he was discovering he was also Matthew Langford. The question that haunted him, as he prepared to confront the man who had stolen him from his mother, was which of these identities would emerge from this crisis? Or perhaps something new entirely. A man forged from both experiences, both stories. Claire joined him on the balcony, slipping her hand into his. You okay? He squeezed her hand. Getting there. It's a lot. Victoria's tough, Claire said. You're more like her than you realize. Ethan considered this. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Behind them, Victoria concluded her call. It's set, she announced. Richard agreed to meet tonight at 8 p.m. Just the two of us. No, Ethan said firmly, turning from the balcony. Not just the two of you. We go together. All of us. He needs to see exactly who he's up against. Victoria studied her son, a smile of maternal pride touching her lips. Together, then, the private dining room at Gibson's Steakhouse offered just the right balance of privacy and public exposure. Richard Hale arrived at precisely 8 p.m., the confidence in his stride faltering momentarily when he saw not just Victoria waiting for him, but Ethan, Claire, and Phillips as well. "I thought we were meeting alone, Victoria," he said, his voice tight as he took the only empty chair. "Change of plans," Victoria replied coolly. "I thought it was time you met our son. Properly." Richard's gaze shifted to Ethan, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, calculation, perhaps even a hint of fear. "I don't know what game you're playing." "No games," Ethan interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. "DNA results. 99,99998% probability that Victoria is my biological mother, which means I'm Matthew Langford, the son you kidnapped and abandoned at St. Michael's Orphanage 27 years ago." Richard's face remained impressively composed, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. "These could be fabricated, and even if they're genuine, they prove nothing about me." Phillips opened his laptop. "Perhaps Eliza Morton's testimony will be more convincing." He pressed play, and the elderly nurse's voice filled the room, detailing how Richard had paid her to look the other way while he took the baby from his crib. The color drained from Richard's face. When the recording ended, he reached for his water glass with a slightly trembling hand. "Fascinating fiction," he said after a long sip. "But the word of a disgraced nurse who abandoned her position decades ago hardly constitutes evidence." "What about this?" Claire slid Alex's flash drive across the table. "Emails between you and Margaret discussing the Matthew situation whenever Victoria showed interest in missing children cases. And a recording from this morning where you both discussed discrediting Victoria and dealing with Ethan, including consideration of more permanent solutions. Is that fiction too?" Richard's composure slipped further. "Where did you get that?" "Margaret's assistant had a crisis of conscience," Victoria said, "and Dr. Werner in Arizona is speaking with police as we sit here. It seems retirement has given him time to reflect on his role in falsifying a death certificate." For the first time, real panic flashed across Richard's face. "You don't understand. It wasn't my idea. Margaret came to me." "Save it for your statement," Phillips cut in. "We're not here to listen to excuses. We're here to offer you a deal." Victoria leaned forward. "Tomorrow morning, Margaret is presenting doctored psychiatric records to the board. Attempting to have me removed as CEO. She's making her move, Richard. And based on your conversation this morning, it sounds like she's setting you up to take the fall if things go wrong." Richard's jaw tightened. "What kind of deal?" "Testify against Margaret," Ethan said. "Provide a sworn statement detailing her role in the kidnapping. In return, we focus our criminal complaints on her, not you, and we don't release this to the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI," Phillips added, turning his laptop to show the evidence of money laundering he'd compiled. Richard stared at the screen, his face ashen. "You've been busy. 27 years busy," Victoria said coldly. "Did you really think I would ever stop looking for my son? That I would ever stop seeking the truth?" Richard's confident facade had completely crumbled. He looked suddenly older, the weight of decades of deception visible in the slump of his shoulders. "What guarantee do I have that you won't use my statement against me too?" "None," Ethan said simply. "But right now, you're facing potential charges for kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, and financial crimes. This is your chance to mitigate at least some of that damage." Richard glanced between their faces, calculating his options. "I need time to consider." "No," Victoria's voice was steel. "The board meeting is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We need your statement tonight." After a long moment, Richard nodded slowly. "I'll give you Margaret. Everything. But I want immunity from prosecution for the kidnapping in writing." "We can't promise that," Phillips said. "But we can provide a letter stating that none of us will personally pursue charges against you for the kidnapping. The district attorney might feel differently, of course." "Fine," Richard said bitterly. "I'll need a lawyer present." "Already arranged," Victoria replied, checking her watch. "She's waiting at my attorney's office. We go there now." As Richard was escorted to Phillips's car, Victoria hung back with Ethan and Claire. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked, letting him potentially walk free after what he did. Victoria's eyes were hard. Nothing about this is ideal, but Margaret was always the driving force, and right now, stopping her from taking control of Langford Industries is the priority. Once that's secured, we can decide how to proceed with Richard. While Richard gave his statement under the watchful eyes of Phillips and the lawyers, Victoria, Ethan, and Claire returned to her penthouse to prepare for the board meeting. Victoria pulled out architectural plans of the Langford Industries building, spreading them across her dining table. "The boardroom is here," she explained, pointing. 2 entrances, the main doors from the reception area, and a private door connected to the CEO's office. "That's our advantage. Margaret won't expect us to come through that way." "Won't it be locked?" Claire asked. "I have the key." Victoria smiled thinly. "The timing needs to be perfect. Margaret will have the floor first. She'll present her case against me. Show her fabricated evidence. Once the board is sufficiently concerned, she'll call for the vote." "That's when we make our entrance?" Ethan asked. "Precisely. Phillips will bring Richard through the main doors. The 3 of us will come through my office. The impact of seeing you both together, mother and son, clearly resembling each other, will be powerful in itself." Victoria's phone chimed with a text. "It's Phillips. Richard's statement is signed and notarized. He's confessed to everything. How Margaret approached him shortly after Matthew's birth. Convinced him that with the baby gone, they could control the Langford fortune if something unfortunate happened to me. He was planning to kill you too." Claire's eyes widened. "Eventually, perhaps. But first, they needed my son out of the way." Victoria's voice caught slightly. "According to Richard, Margaret originally wanted to stage a fatal accident, but he couldn't bring himself to murder an infant. Abandoning you at an orphanage was the compromise." Ethan felt a chill run through him. "So I owe my life to Richard Hale's incomplete moral corruption. That's something." "What about Dr. Werner?" Claire asked. "Any word from Arizona?" Victoria checked another message. Phillips' contact came through. "Werner has provided a statement confirming he falsified the death certificate under pressure from Margaret, who threatened to expose a previous medical ethics violation. He's willing to testify if needed." She looked up at Ethan, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "We have everything we need. After 27 years, we can finally prove what happened to you." The moment was interrupted by the sharp ring of Victoria's landline. She frowned. Few people had that number, and answered cautiously. "Hello?" Her face paled. "Margaret, how did you—" She fell silent, listening, her expression growing increasingly alarmed. "Don't you dare threaten me. We know everything." Another pause. "Margaret, think about what you're doing." She set the phone down slowly, her hand trembling. "What is it?" Ethan moved to her side. "What did she say?" "Richard talked," Victoria said flatly. "Warned her about our meeting. She knows we have his statement. Knows we're planning to confront her at the board meeting." She took a shaky breath. "She said if I set foot in Langford Industries tomorrow, she'll make sure it's the last place I ever go." "She's bluffing," Claire insisted. "She wouldn't risk a public assassination." "I don't think she's talking about killing me herself," Victoria said. "She mentioned having friends in low places who owe her favors. I think she's hired someone." Ethan paced the room, mind racing. "We need to change the plan, if she's expecting us." "No," Victoria interrupted firmly. "We proceed exactly as planned. Margaret is desperate now, making threats she can't follow through on. That's good. It means she's scared. Or dangerous," Ethan countered. "We should at least contact the police." "And tell them what?" "That my sister made a vague threat. We have no proof yet of her involvement in a 27-year-old crime." Victoria squared her shoulders. "No, we stick to the plan, but we take precautions. I'll have my security team sweep the building before we arrive." As Victoria made arrangements with her security chief, Claire pulled Ethan aside. "I don't like this," she whispered. "Margaret sounds unhinged. What if she really has hired someone?" Ethan glanced at Victoria, struck again by the steel in her spine, the unwavering determination that had kept her searching for her son for nearly 3 decades. He recognized that same determination in himself now. A genetic inheritance more significant than any financial legacy. "Then we'll be ready," he said with quiet resolve. "I didn't find my mother after all these years just to lose her now." The morning of the board meeting dawned with an ominous gray sky hanging over Chicago. Victoria's security team had swept the Langford Industries building at 6 a.m., finding nothing suspicious. Richard Hale had spent the night under Phillips's watchful eye at a hotel across town. By 8:30 a.m., Victoria, Ethan, and Claire were in position in Victoria's office. While Phillips waited with Richard in the parking garage, "The board members are arriving," Victoria reported, watching the security feed on her tablet. Margaret's already there, setting up her presentation. Through the video feed, they could see Margaret in the boardroom. Impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled back severely, she moved with tightly controlled energy, arranging documents at each board member's place with precision. "She looks confident," Claire observed. "She doesn't know what's coming," Victoria replied. Though her voice held a note of tension, at precisely 8:55 a.m., Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from Phillips. "In position. R looks nervous, but holding steady." Victoria switched her tablet to show the feed from the corridor outside the boardroom. The 12 board members of Langford Industries were filing in, greeting each other with professional nods and handshakes. These were the power players of Chicago business. Old money, new tech, institutional investors, all with significant stakes in the company Victoria's father had built. "It's time," Victoria said, squaring her shoulders. She looked at Ethan, her eyes softening. "Whatever happens in there, finding you has been worth everything." Ethan squeezed her hand, a lifetime of missed moments hanging between them. At 9 a.m. sharp, they watched Margaret call the meeting to order on the security feed. "Distinguished board members," Margaret's voice came clearly through the tablet's speakers. "I've called this emergency session with the gravest concerns about the current leadership of Langford Industries. My sister Victoria has always been a devoted CEO, but recent events have forced me to question her mental fitness for the role." Margaret clicked to the first slide of her presentation, a montage of newspaper clippings about the death of Matthew Langford, alongside more recent photos showing Victoria at missing children's charities. For 27 years, Victoria has been unable to accept the tragic death of her infant son. While her grief is understandable, her obsession has reached a dangerous new level. She clicked to the next slide, a doctored psychiatric evaluation claiming Victoria suffered from persistent delusional disorder. Last week, Victoria approached a random electrician doing repairs in her office. Convinced this 30-year-old man is her deceased son, she's gone so far as to falsify DNA tests to support this delusion. A murmur of concern spread through the board members. "That's our cue," Victoria whispered, shutting off the tablet. "Phillips will enter with Richard in 2 minutes. We go in 30 seconds. Victoria led the way to the private door connecting her office to the boardroom. She paused, key in hand. Drawing a deep breath, then, with practiced poise, she unlocked the door and stepped through. The conversation in the boardroom halted abruptly. Margaret froze mid-sentence, her face paling as Victoria walked calmly to the head of the table, followed by Ethan and Claire. "Forgive my unorthodox entrance," Victoria said smoothly, "but given the serious accusations being made against me, I thought it best to address them directly." Margaret recovered quickly. "Victoria, this is a closed board meeting. You and your guests need to leave." "Actually, Margaret, I believe the board will want to hear what we have to say." Victoria's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Especially since one of my guests is indeed my son, Matthew Langford." The boardroom doors opened from the corridor side, and Phillips entered with Richard Hale, whose face was gray with stress. Margaret's composure visibly cracked. "Richard, what are you doing here?" "Telling the truth, finally," Richard replied, his voice hollow. Victoria took control of the room. "Board members, I apologize for the drama, but what's unfolding here is more serious than a question of my leadership. It involves criminal conspiracy, kidnapping, and fraud spanning 27 years. She nodded to Phillips, who distributed folders to each board member. These packets contain DNA test results confirming that Ethan Cole, the random electrician Margaret mentioned, is in fact my son, Matthew. They also contain sworn statements from Richard Hale, former nurse Eliza Morton, and Dr. James Werner, all testifying to a conspiracy orchestrated by Margaret Langford to kidnap my son in 1992 and fake his death. The board members opened their folders, expressions of shock spreading around the table. "This is absurd," Margaret sputtered, though her usual confidence was fracturing. "Richard, whatever they're coercing you to say, "It's over, Margaret," Richard interrupted. "I've told them everything. How you came to me weeks after Matthew was born, talking about how we could control Langford Industries if the baby was out of the picture, how you arranged for Eliza Morton to look the other way while we took him from his crib, how you pressured Dr. Werner to falsify the death certificate. The board chairman, Howard Greenberg, an imposing man in his 70s who had been a friend of Victoria's father, removed his reading glasses slowly. These are extraordinarily serious allegations, Margaret. Criminal allegations. They're lying." Margaret's voice rose sharply. "All of them. Victoria has clearly manipulated these people, falsified these documents. The DNA test was conducted by Callaway Laboratories." Victoria interjected calmly. "Dr. Julia Callaway is willing to testify to its authenticity. As for Richard and the others, they've provided their statements to the district attorney's office this morning. Copies were sent to the board as a courtesy before arrests are made." This was a bluff. They hadn't yet approached the duh, but Margaret didn't know that. "You've always been jealous," Margaret hissed at Victoria, her composure completely shattered. "Father's favorite, the pretty one, the smart one, the worthy heir. I was just the afterthought, the spare, even with all my hard work, all my loyalty to this company. It was always going to be yours. Then Matthew's, never mine. So you decided to steal my child." Victoria's voice finally broke with the pain of decades. "To let me believe he was dead while he grew up in an orphanage without his family, without his birthright. It was Richard's idea to leave him at the orphanage." Margaret spat. "I wanted a cleaner solution, but he was weak." A collective gasp went through the boardroom at this near confession of murderous intent. "My God, Margaret," the chairman whispered. "Do you hear yourself?" Margaret's eyes darted wildly around the room, realizing too late what she'd revealed. That's not what You're done," Victoria said quietly. "Richard has provided financial records showing how you both embezzled from Langford Industries to pay off everyone involved in Matthew's disappearance. The board has everything they need to remove you, and the authorities have what they need to prosecute you." Margaret's face contorted with rage. "You think you've won. You think it's that simple." Her hand plunged into her purse. "Gun!" Phillips shouted, lunging forward. But Margaret wasn't reaching for a weapon. She pulled out her phone, frantically typing. "I still have one card to play, dear sister," she said, her smile manic. "You're not the only one who made contingency plans." Before anyone could stop her, Margaret pressed send on a text message. Seconds later, the building's fire alarms blared to life. Sprinklers activated, drenching everyone as emergency lights flashed. "Building evacuation protocols," Victoria explained over the noise. "The board meeting is automatically suspended." "Perfect timing," Margaret laughed, the sound brittle and unhinged. "By the time this is sorted out, certain problems will be permanently resolved." Ethan moved to Claire's side protectively as security personnel burst into the boardroom, directing everyone to evacuation routes. "We need to stay together," he shouted to Victoria over the alarms. But in the confusion of water spraying, alarms blaring, and security officers directing evacuation, Margaret slipped away from the group being escorted to the stairwell. "Where's Margaret?" Victoria called out, realizing her sister was missing. "She went that way." One of the board members pointed down a side corridor. "Said she needed to get something from her office." "We need to find her," Victoria insisted, breaking away from the evacuation group. "She's dangerous." "I'm coming with you," Ethan said immediately. "Me too," Claire added, gripping Ethan's hand. Phillips nodded grimly. "I'll make sure Richard gets to the authorities and doesn't disappear in the chaos." Security tried to direct them toward the evacuation route, but Victoria pulled rank. "I'm the CEO, and there's a threat to this company in the building. Let us pass." They raced down the corridor toward Margaret's office, water from the sprinklers soaking them. The alarm abruptly cut off, leaving an eerie silence punctuated only by the sound of their wet footsteps. She triggered a false alarm, Victoria realized, to create confusion. They reached Margaret's office to find the door ajar. Inside, Margaret was frantically shredding documents and deleting files from her computer. "It's over, Margaret," Victoria said from the doorway. "Security has the building locked down. Police are on their way." Margaret looked up, her face a mask of hatred. It's not over until I say it's over. You think finding your precious son makes everything right? You've ruined me, Victoria. So I'm going to take what matters most to you." Her hand moved to her desk drawer. "Look out!" Ethan shouted, pushing Victoria aside as Margaret pulled out a small pistol. The gunshot cracked through the office as Ethan lunged forward, tackling Margaret. They crashed to the floor, wrestling for control of the weapon. Claire screamed as a second shot discharged into the ceiling. Victoria grabbed a heavy crystal award from Margaret's desk and, with all her strength, brought it down on her sister's wrist. Margaret howled in pain, the gun clattering away across the floor. Security officers burst into the office, weapons drawn. "Freeze. Nobody move." Margaret lay pinned beneath Ethan, her wrist at an unnatural angle, defeat finally written across her face. As the officers handcuffed her, she looked up at Victoria with pure venom. "You always win, don't you, Vicky? The perfect daughter. The perfect mother, even when your son was stolen, you somehow got him back." Victoria helped Ethan to his feet, checking him frantically for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did she hit you?" "I'm fine," he assured her, though his hands shook with adrenaline. As Margaret was led away, she turned back one last time. He would have been raised as a Langford, you know. Had everything. Instead, he grew up with nothing. That was my real victory. I may have failed to keep him from you forever, but I stole 27 years you can never get back." Victoria's face hardened. "No, Margaret. You didn't win anything. You sacrificed your integrity, your freedom, and any chance at happiness, all for jealousy and greed. And despite everything you did, we found each other anyway." She put her arm around Ethan's shoulders, drawing him and Claire close as police officers entered the office. "Family always finds a way back to each other," Victoria said. Not to Margaret, but to her son. Always. 6 months later, the sprawling garden behind Victoria Langford's Lake Michigan estate bloomed with early summer flowers. Under a white pergola draped with wisteria, long tables had been arranged for an intimate gathering of 30 people, a celebration long in the making. Ethan stood near the water's edge, taking a moment alone before the guests arrived. He wore a tailored navy suit that still felt strange after a lifetime in work clothes. But Claire had insisted it brought out his eyes. Eyes now everyone recognized as identical to Victoria's. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and profound personal adjustments. Margaret had been sentenced to 20 years for kidnapping, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Richard had received a reduced sentence of 7 years in exchange for his testimony. The nurse, Eliza Morton, had been granted immunity, while Dr. Werner faced a medical board review but avoided criminal charges due to his cooperation. More challenging than the legal aftermath had been the personal one. Reconciling Ethan Cole's identity with Matthew Langford's birthright, Victoria had formally amended the Langford family trust to name Ethan as her heir, though he had initially resisted. Lost in thought, Claire's voice pulled him back to the present as she joined him by the lake, stunning in a simple blue dress that matched the water. "Just reflecting," Ethan smiled, taking her hand. The diamond ring on her finger caught the afternoon sunlight, a vintage piece that had belonged to Victoria's mother, now symbolizing not just Ethan and Claire's engagement, but the blending of past and future. Having second thoughts about the name change, Claire asked perceptively. Ethan shook his head. "No, Ethan Matthew Langford feels right. Honors who I was, who I am, and who I might have been." The legal name change had been finalized just a week ago, a compromise that Victoria had suggested. "You'll always be Ethan, the man you made yourself into," she had said. "But you're also Matthew, the son I never stopped loving. Carry both names proudly." "The guests are starting to arrive." Claire nodded toward the house, where cars were pulling into the circular driveway. "Your mother is looking for you." His mother. The phrase still sent a surge of emotion through him. Wonder, gratitude, and a lingering sadness for all the years lost. They walked back toward the gathering, where Victoria was greeting the first arrivals. At 53, she radiated a new vitality, as if finding her son had restored something essential within her. She had surprised everyone by announcing her retirement as CEO of Langford Industries 3 months ago, appointing a well-respected executive from outside the family to take her place. "The company consumed my life while I searched for Matthew," she had explained to a bewildered board. "Now that I've found him, I don't want to waste another minute on boardroom battles when I could be building a relationship with my son." Instead, she had established the Langford Foundation for Missing Children, using her business acumen and substantial fortune to help other families separated by crime. Disaster, or circumstance, among the first guests to arrive were Sister Agnes and several staff members from St. Michael's Orphanage. The elderly nun embraced Ethan warmly. "I always knew you were meant for something special," she said, her eyes misting. "Every child who passes through our doors is precious. But you, there was always something in your eyes, a depth that spoke of an extraordinary journey ahead." Victoria approached, greeting Sister Agnes with genuine appreciation. "Thank you for caring for my son when I couldn't, for giving him values and strength that have made him the man he is today." "He did most of that himself," Sister Agnes replied with a knowing smile. "Stubborn independence from the start. But now I see where he got it from." Daniel Phillips arrived next. Accompanied by his wife, the journalist had won a prestigious award for his series on the Langford kidnapping case and its resolution. More importantly to Ethan, he had become a trusted friend. "The book offers up to 7 figures, Phillips mentioned as they shook hands. "Your story has captivated the country." "The answer's still no," Ethan said firmly. "Some things aren't for public consumption." The gathering slowly filled with people who had been part of Ethan's life as Cole, and those who represented the Langford legacy he was only beginning to understand. His work crew from Cole Electrical mingled with Victoria's society friends. Claire's kindergarten colleagues chatted with Langford Industries executives. Most meaningful to Ethan was the presence of families from the Langford Foundation, parents who had been reunited with missing children, and others still searching but finding hope in the Foundation's support. As the afternoon sun began its descent toward the lake, Victoria clinked her glass for attention. The guests gathered around as mother and son stood side by side, their resemblance striking in the golden light. "Thank you all for coming today," Victoria began. "This gathering marks not just my son's official name change to Ethan Matthew Langford, but a celebration of homecoming long overdue." She turned to Ethan, her composure momentarily faltering. 27 years ago, evil actions separated us, but love, stubborn, relentless love, brought us back together. I never stopped looking for you, never stopped believing you were out there somewhere. Finding you has been the miracle of my life." Ethan stepped forward, unaccustomed to public speaking, but determined to express what was in his heart. "Growing up without knowing my origins, I built an identity from scratch. Ethan Cole is, a man I'm proud to be. But learning that I am also Matthew Langford hasn't erased that identity. It's completed it." He glanced at Victoria. "My mother has taught me that we don't have to choose between who we were born to be and who we've become. We can honor both." He raised his glass. "To finding your way home, even when the path takes a lifetime." The toast was met with warm applause. As guests dispersed to enjoy the catered dinner, Claire slipped her hand into Ethan's. "There's something we should tell your mother today," she whispered, her free hand resting momentarily on her stomach. "When the time is right." Ethan's eyes widened in delighted surprise. "Are you sure?" Claire nodded, her smile radiant. "Just confirmed yesterday you're going to be a father, Ethan Matthew Langford." The joy that surged through him was overwhelming, a future unfurling before him that would build upon the reconnected past. A child who would know from the beginning exactly where they came from, who would never question their identity or feel the ache of familial absence that had shadowed his own childhood. Later, as twilight settled over the lake and lanterns illuminated the garden, Ethan found a quiet moment to share the news with Victoria, her eyes filled with tears as she embraced them both. "A grandchild," she whispered. "Another generation, another chance to get it right." The three of them stood together, silhouetted against the deepening blue of the lake, forming a tableau of family reunited and expanding, past, present, and future interwoven. In Victoria's study, carefully preserved in a glass case, stood the wooden rocking horse with the star on its flank, the talisman that had connected mother and son across decades of separation. Beside it now sat the framed DNA results, the legal documents of Ethan's name change, and a family photograph taken just weeks ago. Victoria and Ethan, with Claire, all smiling into the camera, with the undisguised joy of those who know the true value of family because they've experienced its absence. As the celebration continued into the evening, Ethan excused himself briefly to visit this shrine to rediscovered identity. He touched the glass case gently, remembering the little boy who had clutched this horse in an orphanage, never suspecting it was the key to his origins. Victoria joined him quietly. "I've been thinking about something Sister Agnes said earlier, about your independence, your resilience. She likes to remind me I was fixing broken lamps at St. Michael's when I was 10. Ethan smiled. "That wasn't just innate talent," Victoria said softly. "Your grandfather, my father, was the same way. Mechanical, intuitive with his hands. He built Langford Industries from a small electrical contracting company. Started out wiring houses himself." Ethan looked at her in surprise. "I didn't know that. Perhaps some things are carried in the blood after all," Victoria mused. "Not just wealth or position, but aptitudes, inclinations. You became an electrician without ever knowing your grandfather built his fortune the same way." From the garden, Claire called for them to rejoin the party as they walked back together. Victoria added, "The foundation is opening a new center next month, providing trade apprenticeships for aged-out foster youth. I was hoping you might consider advising on the electrical training program." Ethan nodded, understanding this for what it was, not just a request, but an acknowledgement of his skills and experience, a way to bridge his two worlds. "I'd like that." Under stars now emerging above Lake Michigan, the celebration continued, not just of a name made legally whole, but of lives reconnected despite overwhelming odds. The wooden horse had completed its journey, carrying its rider home at last, as Ethan looked around at the gathering. Claire discussing nursery colors with Victoria, his work crew sharing raucous stories with Phillips, Sister Agnes blessing the foundation families. He felt, for perhaps the first time, truly complete. Ethan Cole and Matthew Langford, once separated by circumstance and crime, now unified in one man looking toward a future bright with possibility and rich with newfound love. The morning light would always find its way home,